Hello, Viking TV. My name is Aaron Lawton, and I'm the head of expedition operations for Viking. I've been here at this position for about 2.5 years. I'm very excited to be here today to talk to you about the Antarctic, as I've been traveling to the Antarctic for the last 20, almost 25 years, with many more than 100 voyages to the frozen continent under my belt. I'm happy to tell you more about one of our exciting expedition itineraries. Viking has created the ultimate itineraries for those of you who have dreamed of discovering truly remote wilderness. Today we'll focus on one of our signature expedition voyages that allows you to sail from the tip of South America to the last continent of Antarctica. Antarctica, home to towering mountains, glacial plateaus, and colonies of penguins. Magnificent wildlife and dramatic unexplored landscapes will unfold before you during landings and excursions, and as you relax in the comfort of your state-of-the-art stateroom. We'll start with a short video about this 13-day journey.
Follow in the tradition of the great polar explorers, setting your sights on Antarctica with this fascinating 13-day itinerary. Your once-in-a-lifetime journey begins in Argentina's capital, Buenos Aires. Then it's on to Ushuaia, the southernmost city in the world. From here, you'll sail past legendary Cape Horn and cross the fabled Drake Passage as you head for the bottom of the world. Antarctica. This is nature at its most flawless. An immense wild land of extremes and rugged beauty. A place so remote it eluded discovery until just 2 centuries ago. Norwegian Roald Amundsen, the first man to the South Pole, described this place as a wonderful fairy tale in blue and white. In this extraordinary setting, you'll enjoy a week of enlightening, educational and deeply enriching experiences. Each one designed to help you better understand the intricate details of this fabled continent. A majestic ecosystem only a tiny fraction of the world's population will ever have the privilege to see. Your purpose-built Viking vessel is an ideal base from which to explore and learn. A floating classroom sharing the science behind the otherworldly environment you're exploring. The ships of Vikings sail with a range of vessels designed to explore from the sea, making it easy to investigate these stunning landscapes. As you travel these dramatic waters, your nature-based schedule will be optimized to take advantage of weather and, most importantly, wildlife viewing opportunities. You have a front row seat in nature's greatest theatre when Antarctica's locals decide to put on their display. And of course, in the spirit of discovery, you'll spend significant time on the continent's unspoiled shores, examining the extreme geology with expedition leaders. An exploration of Antarctica with Viking is an illuminating, rewarding journey. A profound, thought-provoking immersion into this remarkable place. An unforgettable adventure where you are sure to be humbled by nature. Your expedition concludes in Ushuaia, Argentina, the world's southernmost city, where you'll board your flight for a return to Buenos Aires.
The Antarctic Explorer itinerary is available in one direction, beginning in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and taking you south to Antarctica before disembarking in Ushuaia, Argentina. Over 13 days, you will visit 2 continents and up to 3 oceans. This itinerary includes a combination of both offshore and inshore sailing, allowing for viewing of vast ocean vistas, incredible wildlife, and some of the world's most beautiful scenery, and time on board to relax in the spa or learn more about the history of exploration in the region. And if you'd like to arrive early, get oriented, and experience more of South America prior to your sailing, we have 4 pre-extensions, including packages in Brazil and Argentina, or in Chile and Argentina. Choose from 3 nights, Buenos Aires and the Paraná Delta. This 3-night stay in Buenos Aires and Tigre will immerse you in the vibrant culture of Argentina, blending this with the waterways and wetlands of the Paraná Delta. Or 4 nights with Iguazu Falls. One of the wonders of the world, Iguazu Falls is a sight to behold. With an expert guide, you will be immersed in the natural and cultural history of this dramatic cataract located within the Atlantic rainforest. This tour ends with a stay in Buenos Aires, home of the tango. Or enjoy a 4-night Easter Island and Santiago tour and immerse yourself in the local traditions and folklore of the Rapa Nui people of Easter Island. Journey to the Atacama Desert on a 5-night tour and experience one of the driest places on Earth. Let's look at the itinerary map for more on this journey. Your voyage begins with 2 days in Argentina. The crossing of the Drake Passage is followed by 7 days to explore Antarctica, before a return crossing of the Drake takes you back to Ushuaia, Argentina, where your voyage concludes. Currently, this itinerary is offered in the Northern Hemisphere's winter months, November to February, which is actually the Antarctic summer. During part of the season, there will be 24 hours of daylight. Temperatures are warmest in January, which is also the high season. February is the best time of year for whale watching, which might include orcas, humpbacks, and minke whales. Antarctica is a continent of extremes, from the wildlife to the scenery, and of course to the weather. We recommend that you dress in layers, and given the nature of our expedition voyages, you will want to pack quick-drying or waterproof clothing and accessories. If you have an interest in the wildlife, the Antarctic summer offers a great opportunity to view the animals when they're in their breeding and chick-raising phase, making colonies very active sites to visit. Some of the species that we hope to see include gentoo penguins, the world's fastest diving bird. Gentoo penguins can dive at speeds greater than 20 miles per hour during their hunt for krill, squid, and fish. Adelie penguins. Spending summers on the islands of Antarctica and the rest of the year on the continent, Adelie penguins dive as far as 600 feet underwater in search of food. Other penguins you may see include the distinctively marked chin straps and potentially the less common emperor penguins, largest of all the penguin species. Whales. Plentiful fish, squid, krill, and plankton beckon minke whales, humpback, and even fin whales, while resident populations of orcas can be found hunting seals in some of the coastal waterways. Which leads us to seals. Among Antarctica's population are doe-eyed Weddell seals, fierce leopard seals, crab-eater seals, fur seals, and deep-diving elephant seals. And who can forget the migratory birds? Abundant food makes the Antarctic Peninsula a summer home for Antarctic terns, shags, skuas, and petrels. I should take a moment to say a few words about our new expedition ships. We have applied more than 2 decades of experience and expertise in river and ocean voyages to create the perfect expedition experience that will live up to our commitment to keep you exploring the world in comfort. Here is a quote from the famous Norwegian explorer, Roald Amundsen, that speaks to the intention and thought behind the design of our brand new, state-of-the-art polar-class expedition vessels, Viking Octantis and Viking Polaris. He said, "I may say that this is the greatest factor, the way in which the expedition is equipped, the way in which every difficulty is foreseen, and precautions taken for meeting or avoiding it. Victory awaits him who has everything in order." For expedition voyages, Viking is proud to introduce 2 new purpose-built ships optimally sized for expeditions, small enough to navigate remote areas, yet large enough to provide speed, superior handling, and stability in the roughest seas. Throughout the ships, there is a focus on panoramic views, allowing you the opportunity to be as close as possible to the most majestic scenery on Earth. Our vessels merge comfort and exploration in an unprecedented way. This optimized size also facilitates enhanced enrichment activities by carrying a fleet of Zodiacs, special operation boats, 2-seater kayaks, and 6-passenger submarines, and providing outstanding venues for onboard lectures and learning. We further perfect the expedition experience by providing the Science Lab. Our onboard laboratory and citizen science programs further enable discovery and immersion into your destination. And let me introduce you to my favorite place on our expedition ship, the hangar. This Viking exclusive is a unique in-ship marina that is sheltered from wind and waves and allows for preparation of our fleet of Zodiacs, special operations boats, kayaks, and submarines. The vessel has been designed with 9 shell doors located around the ship, allowing embarkation into the small boats from the most protected section of the ship. If you've traveled with Viking before, you know we have the most knowledgeable guides. On Viking expeditions, you will travel with Viking specialists, including our chief scientist. Science is an important aspect of your experiences during your excursions, incorporating experiential activities and fieldwork. On our Antarctic expedition itineraries, all activities are included in your cruise fare to ensure you maximize your discoveries. Expedition activities include everything from special operations boat sailings and Zodiac landings to tranquil kayak outings and underwater submarine dives. Hike through magnificent landscapes and access remote areas, all led by an experienced team of experts skilled in operating in rugged and polar environments. Viking has partnered with leading, globally recognized institutions to enrich your experience. Scientists from the University of Cambridge's Scott Polar Research Institute will undertake fieldwork on board our expedition ships. Ornithologists of the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, a bird research facility, will regularly be on board, field testing new observation methods and providing advice to guests. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, is an American scientific agency within the United States Department of Commerce that focuses on the conditions of the oceans, major waterways, and the atmosphere. And our Viking field research scientists. Our partner institutions provide each expedition's Viking field research scientists. These scientists will work with our chief scientist on board the vessel to undertake a wide variety of research programs. These scientists will work in our onboard laboratory, in our small boats, and onshore to conduct their research and offer guests a unique opportunity to learn about and participate in ongoing research. Every journey will also be accompanied by a team of specialists and expedition guides that complete our Viking expedition team, ranging from biologists, botanists, geologists, glaciologists, oceanographers, and ornithologists to polar experts and researchers. Now let's explore the Antarctic Explorer itinerary, day by day. Day 1, and welcome to Buenos Aires, where your voyage begins. Some of you will join us after your pre-extension stay. Others will arrive in South America today. If you've arranged air travel through Viking, we will transfer you from the airport to your hotel. Time permitting, you may wish to explore Argentina's cosmopolitan capital. After a night in your hotel in Buenos Aires, you will awake on day 2 and travel by private charter plane to the very tip of South America, the world's southernmost city called Ushuaia. Here you will board your Viking expedition ship. As you explore your ship, take time to familiarize yourself with the various areas on board and meet your expedition team. Today, day 3, you will continue your southbound peregrination, sailing across the Drake Passage. This legendary route was named after its discoverer, Sir Francis Drake. As you sail the Drake Passage, you will cross the Antarctic Convergence and enter the waters of the Southern Ocean. In many respects, the Antarctic Convergence is considered the biological boundary of Antarctica, one of the many interpretations on the boundary of Antarctica. Crossing the convergence is characterized by a rapid drop in sea temperature, which often leads to changing weather conditions above the surface. Now that you're in the Southern Ocean, keep your eyes peeled for your first iceberg and watch for blows as we follow the routes of the migrating baleen whales. You will have an opportunity to learn more about Antarctica, its exploration history, natural history, and geologic history through the opportunity to attend a lecture from one of your ship's many Viking specialists. This can be done in our magnificent lecture theater, the Aula, or viewed live on your stateroom TV, or on demand at your leisure while enjoying the comfort of your stateroom. Day 4 finally arrives, and with it comes your first views of Antarctica. Welcome to this incredible place. Welcome to Antarctica, where you will have 6 days to soak up the majestic beauty of this isolated corner of the globe. Keep an eye out for whales in their natural habitat, or partially out of their natural habitat, as shown in this image. Scan passing ice floes for seals and penguins, and search for the elusive snow petrels and Antarctic petrels flying over the waters of the Antarctic Peninsula. Landscapes include colorful lichens and rocky beaches. Each piece of ice is a unique sculpture, sculpted by the wind, waves, and sun for you to appreciate. For Antarctic expedition voyages, a detailed packing list will be provided. To further ensure that you get the most out of your experience, guests will receive a Viking expedition kit, which includes the use of boots, binoculars, waterproof pants, and outerwear, plus a Viking expedition jacket to keep. One of your shore excursions today might include kayaking among glaciers or hiking a snow-covered beach. Our small craft allow you to experience your surroundings up close. Note the distinct crackling sound that bits of floating glacial ice, called brash ice, make as air bubbles trapped inside are released. This is a reward that comes from journeying out in a kayak or a zodiac. The scenery of Antarctica is as breathtaking in person as you can imagine it to be. Zodiac cruising, special operations boat cruising, kayaking, and submarine dives all offer different experiences to shore excursions. And your expedition vessel, Viking Octantis or Viking Polaris, has many comfortable places to enjoy a panoramic view, from both inside the vessel as well as out on the outer decks. A favorite place to sit and reflect on the experience has been the Finsa Terrace, our stern deck and located just outside the Aula, our lecture hall. Our expedition team will be found around the ship, in the small boats and on shore, to answer your questions and interpret the sights. Day 11 arrives and you are back at sea, navigating northwards across the Drake Passage as you travel back to Argentina. After many days of mind-changing exploration, this is a perfect time to relax with a treatment at the Nordic Spa and reflect on the experiences gained. Enjoy the Explorer's Lounge as we continue north across the Drake Passage, or wander down to the onboard shop in search of a special keepsake. Attend a lecture in the Aula, where our Viking specialists will bring the experiences together in a thought-provoking way. Coming from the mid-60s of south latitude, we have traveled north to approach the 56th parallel, seeing the islands of Tierra del Fuego, and more specifically the Cape Horn archipelago. As we sail past Cape Horn, we'll sail through the fabled waters where the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans meet. The Cape was originally named Kap Hoorn by a 17th century Dutch merchant and explorer, William Schouten, after the city of Hoorn in the Netherlands. To this day, rounding the Cape is a milestone reserved for experienced sailors. On your Viking expedition ship, you will join the ranks of other intrepid seafarers who have completed this legendary passage between the two oceans. Leaving the Drake Passage and Cape Horn behind, we sail back into the Beagle Channel and back to Ushuaia. Keep your eyes peeled as you sail past islands in the Beagle Channel, watching for seal and bird colonies. After breakfast on board, many of you will disembark and proceed to the airport for your return flight home. Some of you will opt to continue your voyage with one of our extension packages. We have one fantastic post-extension package, our 5-night Gateway to Patagonia experience. This exploration of Patagonia will introduce you to yet another region of unparalleled beauty. Having visited Antarctica more than 100 times, it is really a miracle that I've been able to keep this presentation as succinct as it is. Trust me when I say that this has been a struggle. Thank you for joining me today on Viking TV. As this concludes our presentation, I'm now happy to answer any questions you may have. I hope you enjoyed the images and a bit of information, and I think Heather's got some of your questions that perhaps I can answer now.
Thank you, Aaron. We'll start with some questions about the submarines, as we've had quite a lot of those today. So Sam in Vancouver asks, do we have the chance to experience the excursion, and is it free of charge? And then we have Charlie in Atlanta who asks, how do you sign up for the sub, and does everyone get a chance to go?
Yeah, thank you for those questions, both Sam and Charlie. And yes, we expect to be able to operate the subs this coming season. We've been using them through the Great Lakes. In fact, we had some people down in the sub today on Georgian Bay. So they're operating, and they are included. They're free of charge. It's an excursion that's included in the price of the voyage. There are some limitations, obviously, going into a sub. We have payload restrictions. There's mobility to get in and out of the sub, and our dive officers on the ship will run through a briefing and give you a little more information about that. You will have the opportunity to pre-book the diving, and that'll open up in My Viking Journey when your voyage opens. Usually, our goal is to have it open at the same time as the rest of the activities open in the voyage, and you will be able to book a day of the voyage to go for a dive. To get it sort of more tightly planned than that, once you get on the ship, you'll be told what your sort of dive window is, as our submarine pilots will need to run a payload calculation and put groups together based on sort of aggregate sizes or weights. But yes, we're looking forward to operating. We had a couple of test dives and a couple of dives last year, and then we've had a great summer on the Great Lakes with the subs.
Thank you. A question here from Michelle. She's in Miami, and also a similar question from Paul in the United States. So Michelle asks, what is the intensity level of the expeditions? Do you think they can still enjoy this itinerary if they don't kayak or want to walk on the snow?
Yes. What is the intensity level of the expeditions? And I think that's a great question. You come with what you want to do. You come with what you want to experience, and we will find a way to cater to that. We have a large team on board the ship to look after you, to share their knowledge with you. The Antarctic experience happens on shore. It happens when you're walking in the snow, as you say. It happens in the small boats, in the Zodiacs, going for a Zodiac cruise, or in the special operations boats. The special operations boat you can get into from inside the ship in the hangar. So it's a level walk across from where you're waiting to board into the boat. You sit down in your seat, and then the boat launches. You go for your boat ride, come back, and jump out again, level, comfortable inside the ship. So we can cater to all activity levels, and I started to say that Antarctic experience happens on shore, it happens on the water, but it also happens on board the ship. The Finsa Terrace outside the Aula, that stern terrace, makes a fabulous viewing platform to just sit out there and enjoy the views around the back of the ship. Why around the back of the ship? Well, if we're going forward, we get a bit of lee, a bit of shelter there. But also there are bird species we see in the Drake Passage, but also down in the Gerlache Strait that tend to be ship following. They're following behind the ship as the propellers are stirring up the water. They're bringing nutrients to the surface, and the birds are diving down and feeding. So that's a great place to sit and watch some of the bird life and sea life. But we also have fantastic viewing spaces from inside. I've thought the deck 5 in the Explorer's Lounge, the upper deck of the Explorer's Lounge, having really nice viewing forward. Then deck 4 as well, beautiful forward viewing. A little busier, that's where the bar is. You can get the bar service or table service upstairs as well, but it's sometimes a little quieter up there if you just want to reflect on the space. And then the living room, comfortable seats facing out in either side of the living room, also on deck 5. So you can really experience that. Now experiencing it, seeing it on one hand is part of it. Learning about it is the other part of it. And our enrichment program is designed to happen on shore, but also to happen on the ship through lectures, through workshops, through engagement with the scientists on the ship and assisting with some of their science work. You don't need a PhD or even a master's degree to assist them. They will assess your capabilities and assign a task that falls within your ability. But getting involved in the science is a great way to learn about and experience Antarctica.
Wonderful. Thank you, Aaron. Question here from Lawrence in Fort Lauderdale, and he asks, are the necessary coats, hats and boots provided by Viking?
Yes, so coats and boots are part of the kit that will be for you, waiting for you in your cabin when you embark in your stateroom. And hats, we don't provide the hats. Hats are a very personal thing. Each person likes their own specific hat and design and shape and color, and so hats. Recommend you bring your own hat. If not, we have some wonderful hats in the boutique on board the ship. Probably, I would guess, Norwegian, Scandinavian inspired designs, and they're beautiful, very warm. But the coats are yours to keep, and the boots we provide for the duration of the voyage, and then we'll collect them at the end of the voyage, so you don't have to worry about packing boots down to the ship and home.
Perfect. Thank you, Aaron. Question here now from Maureen in Kent, and she asks, are all passengers able to get off the ship for excursions? How long does the activities last? For example, how long can you stay on shore and how long can you stay in the kayak? And is it possible to do more than one activity in one day?
Yes, thank you for those questions, Maureen. And Heather, I'll do my best to remember all the aspects. So yes, we plan our operations so that we can get everyone ashore at each landing site. Everyone who wants to go ashore. You're not obliged to go ashore. It's your choice each day. When you book your excursions or your activities in My Viking Journey, you will have an ability to pick time window to go ashore and visit the landing site. You can also visit more than one or do more than one of these expedition activities in a day. My Viking Journey won't allow you to book two activities concurrently, but they will. But if one activity is at a different time, then you could book into those two activities. Those activities include that you'll have the opportunity to book will be potentially a Zodiac landing, a Zodiac cruise, a kayak excursion, a special operations boat excursion. It could be a tour of the science lab. These are all activities that you can book in the day. Getting off the ship sounds to be your something you're keen on doing. So yes, you'd have the opportunity to do a couple of those activities in a day. Not every day. It depends on space availability and the other things you've got planned throughout the course of the journey. But it's certainly you're able to do that. I think there was a question about duration of time in the kayak and duration of time ashore. And that's really quite, for the shore landing, it's quite site dependent. Our goal is to have anybody who wants to be ashore for onshore at least an hour. And then it depends on the site and depends on people's comfort level on the site. We're at a landing site over a multi-hour period, so we have a bit of flexibility in that. With the kayaks, what we generally find, I've been guiding kayak operations in the Antarctic for 21 years, and what we tend to find is that, and that was corroborated last year on the Antarctic Peninsula with our first season with the Octantis. Was that about an hour and 15 minutes is what people find a good time to be out. That doesn't seem like a long time, but it does when by the time you get dressed up in your dry suit, get your layers on, realize you shouldn't have had that second cup of tea, you peel some layers off, you deal with that, and then you go on your excursion. You go down, you get in a Zodiac, you transfer out, you go paddling. So you're on the kayak for about an hour and 15 minutes. And then you're starting to think about, ooh, that second cup of tea is still punishing me. And we find just with the cooler temperatures that people don't last outside quite as long. So those are, I think I got most of the questions or answers to most of your questions there.
That's perfect. Thank you, Aaron. So we have Greg here in Chicago. He says, we're going on this trip in January. He says, will the submarine go underneath the polar ice cap? And can you tell us a bit more about what he might hope to see under the water?
Oh, that's a great question. So I'm excited. I might see you. I'll be on one of the ships in January. So I'll hopefully look forward to sailing with you and excited to have you coming with us. So it's a great question about the polar ice cap and will the submarines go under the polar ice cap. So Antarctica is a continent surrounded by ocean. So the ice, the main ice of Antarctica is on land, is land-fast ice. And we wouldn't be going under any ice that's attached to the shoreline. Generally under fast ice or under the snout of glaciers. That's a dangerous place to be in front of glaciers. So we tend to be out in open water in bays around islands and so on. Will we get to see ice from below? Yes, and generally, I was very fortunate last year. They were doing some testing of the submarines, and I got to go down with one of our relief captains and a couple of the pilots in one of the subs, and really, to me, the most exciting part was actually sitting in the submarine on the surface. And I'm hoping that our chief sub pilot isn't watching this, because he groans when I say this. But for me, the most exciting thing was to see the bottom of a small bergy bit, a small piece of ice about that big, maybe the size of a large watermelon. To see that, the bottom of that from below while being dry, was quite exciting. I'd seen the bottom of ice on the kayak guide, so demonstrating rolling a kayak, I'd seen up from rolling a kayak, but not from being comfortable and warm. So yes, you will see ice potentially from the submarine if there's ice around, and but not under the polar ice cap. Yes, what you do see. Well, there are various. I'm not a marine biologist. There are sea sponges, all kinds of different marine invertebrates that are down on the bottom. And what I found interesting with my short experience was the first 20, 30 meters as we descended, so 40 to 60 feet as we descended, the shoreline was quite clear, and that's from the scouring of icebergs and so on as they grind along, and they're like big bulldozers, underwater bulldozers that just grind everything away. But then as we got deeper, we got into there were sea sponges and so on, glass sponges and so on under on the ocean floor, and it was quite amazing to see.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Aaron. We've got a couple of questions coming in about this topic. So I'll just read this one from Norm in Glasgow in the United States. And he says, what can we expect in the Drake Passage regarding seasickness? And can you tell us about the stability of the ship?
Yes, I can. So what can we expect in the Drake Passage? Well, there's two Drake Passages, really. There's two crossings of the Drake Passage, but there's two passages. It's the Drake Lake and the Drake Shake, and that's kind of what we say as I've been a long-time expedition leader. The marketing teams don't like me saying Drake Shake and Drake Lake, but that's really what we're experiencing. Now, the stability of the ship. So the Drake Shake is kind of rough. You've got the Antarctic Circumpolar Current, which rotates around, circles around Antarctica. You've got the Drake Passage, which is a narrowing of that ocean, that southern ocean between the tip of South America and the point of the Antarctic Peninsula. So you've got all this water that comes in, and then it has to compress and go through this passage. If you think of a river and the water picking up speed in a river as a river constricts, it picks up speed and gets a little turbulent. That's what happens in the Drake Passage. There are lots of times that the Drake is calm. There's no weather systems coming, and it's just a beautiful crossing. But even when it's not a crossing, I went across last year in 40 knots of wind, and I use a water flask that's got a nice lid on the top here, and I went down to breakfast and left my water flask on my desk on deck 4, I think it was, with 40 knots of wind blowing right beside my computer with water in the flask. And I got halfway through breakfast and I was like, oh no. And I went back up to my cabin and the water flask was sitting right there and it hadn't spilled, and and I put it away and put the lid back on. The ship is very stable. We've got two things that make it, there's probably 25 features that make it stable, but 2 or 3 big things to my mind. One is the size of the ship. At 205 meters, 600 and something feet, it's a big ship. It's 23 meters wide, 205 meters long. It is built to be stable and comfortable and safe in these seas. And so it's a big, solid ship. It moves smoothly. It's got a beautiful feel to it. It's not got a huge decks and decks and decks of superstructure that make it top heavy. The design, you can see it over my shoulder here. The design, it's an absolutely stunning ship. And that I think is one big part of it that makes it that it helps with stability. It's got the fins that come out, the active stabilizing fins that come out. That once we're in open water and we're moving, we bring get up to speed across the Drake. That those fins actively stabilize the ship. And then it's got stabilizing flume tanks, or not flume tanks, but a water ballast stabilizing system as well that helps with the stability. So that it's a really comfortable ship. What I noticed, I've sailed on, I've crossed the Drake over 200, over 250 times probably, and I haven't been on a ship as comfortable crossing the Drake as I was last year on the Octantis. It's a comfortable ship from that point of view. It just handles the seas well, and our captain, who I sailed with, and I sailed with a few of them, each one of them has been very comfortable with the seaworthiness, the sea handling of the ship. It just flies across the Drake. It's fast as well, so we get across the Drake faster, which gives us the ability. We're not in a race to get there, but what it does is it gives us the ability to get around weather systems. So instead of pounding right through the middle of one, or trying to get away from one and having it overtake us, we have a few extra knots of speed that allow us to work around weather systems.
Fantastic, thank you, Aaron. So a question here from Andy in the United States, and he asks, what are the ranges of temperatures we can expect at the sites in Antarctica, both daytime and nighttime?
Oh, Andy, I wish you were somewhere other than the United States asking that question, because I am terrible with Fahrenheit. So I'm going to give you the temperatures in degrees, and then I apologize that I usually try to have a conversion up on my computer, but I'm daytime temperatures are around freezing in the early season and the late season, around freezing up to about 10 degrees Celsius above freezing. So 0 to 10 degrees is where I would estimate. It can be up as high in the peak season, as high as 12 degrees, is probably 13 degrees maybe Celsius. Nighttime temperatures dropping to -1, 2. Can be a little cooler in October, November, and into late March. We're not there in late March, so that's irrelevant. And during the peak season, the daytime, nighttime temperatures would be 0, -1 Celsius. It's a pretty comfortable. Depends on where you are in the United States. You have some fairly temperate climates and some more frigid polar-like climates. So it would be, I would say, in many respects, it would be like a Seattle winter's day. The Seattle or Vancouver, Canada winter's day is how I sort of compare it, between 0 and 10 degrees most days.
Perfect. Thank you, Aaron. Questions here from Kathy and Bill in the United States. So they ask, what kind of camera is recommended, and will an iPhone camera work in Antarctica?
Yes. What kind of camera is recommended? The best camera is the camera that you're going to carry with you, and the camera you know how to use, and the camera you're comfortable with. In so many ways, Antarctica is such a unique and special place. For many people, it is a once-in-a-lifetime trip. I've flipped through the Viking catalogs, brochures, and I don't know if you could do any trip twice. There's so many places to go. So if you're going to go on this trip to Antarctica, make sure you know how to use the camera that you have. Don't buy a new camera right before, unless you have time to test it somewhere else before you go on the trip. In terms of whether an iPhone camera, the newer iPhone or Samsung Android cameras or phones, funny I call them a camera. I think I use mine more as a camera than as a phone. The newer ones, sort of the latest models, have some fantastic cameras built into them. In fact, I think many of the updates, the most significant updates from the 13 to the 14 or whatever device it is in the camera technology. That's the one people are looking at. So you can get some great images from using an iPhone on the ship. If there's specific things you're looking for that require bigger lenses, if you're looking to get, shots of the nests, the penguin nests, and big close-up zoom in full feature shots where the background fades out or blurs out, so that you've got you're getting a tight depth of field. Then you might want a mirrorless or an SLR camera, a more complex camera. If you've got one and you're comfortable using it, then bring it. It won't go to waste. But if you're going to buy a camera just for this trip, or this is the excuse you need to buy a new camera, just give yourself some time to use it and get used to it and test it in a few different environments beforehand. A couple of things about cameras and out, the cooler temperatures. Using your phone or using a camera out in a Zodiac or on shore, you want to make sure you've got a waterproof case to store it in. So you can put it back in, have a lanyard, or have a case that you can attach a lanyard to, so that when you're using it from a Zodiac, you've got a string around your wrist, so that if it slips out of your cold hands, it doesn't end up in the water, just dangles from your wrist. That's a great thing to have. Having either a plastic bag, it doesn't have to be a fancy case. It can be a plastic bag, it can be a dry bag, it can be a Ziploc bag to put your camera in, or you can get some quite nice, compact, fairly affordable waterproof cases to put your cameras in. Sometimes the actual case, you take your case off your phone and put a waterproof case around the phone, or it just, it's a custom sort of envelope, the waterproof envelope that the phone fits in, that you can shoot through a window in, or you can pull it out of that, take a picture, and then put it back in. The other thing is, if you're using a camera phone, then a phone camera, then bring a backup battery device, so that you can, if you're out in the special ops boat and you find your battery's dying, you're doing video, the video in the colder temperatures will drain the battery faster. You can plug it in, put the backup battery device in your pocket, and have the phone plugged in while you're using it, and keep it charging, trickle charging as you're using it. I would say using the phones, the big thing is battery life, and the sort of SLR cameras and mirrorless cameras, their batteries tend to have a little bit more life in them, but having a spare battery is a great backup plan. If you're going with a more complex camera that doesn't have a huge onboard memory storage like a phone does, then making sure you have a backup card, memory card to put in the camera to replace the one in your camera, or to have a device that after each day of excursions you can pull your photos off, clear them off that, and then reuse. Most serious photographers will have a number of the memory cards. They won't delete or erase those cards until they get home and they've backed up those photos 16 different times on 15 different devices, and then they'll delete the cards. So that's a few comments about the cameras.
That's brilliant advice. Thank you, Aaron. A question here from Elizabeth in the United States, and she asks, could you provide some information about the quality of the optics and binoculars that are available on board?
Yes. The binoculars we're using on board, my recollection is that they're 8x42, so 8 power magnification, and then the aperture or diameter is 42. So they're not a compact pocket binocular. They're a binocular that you'd wear around your neck on the strap. They come with a floating strap, so if you drop them over the side of the Zodiac, they're waterproof. They're a good binocular. They're a binocular that many of our guides use, and they're not your hummingbird spotting in the Amazon rainforest type of multi-$1,000 binocular, but for the type of wildlife we're looking for in the Antarctic, the size of the wildlife, the penguins, the whales, the seals, these are excellent binoculars, and easy to use. They've got a diopter adjustment, so if your eyes aren't completely even in terms of strength, you can adjust the diopter on the one eye and then focus them. Our naturalists on board the ship will run a few binocular familiarization or orientation workshops throughout the course of the voyage. And of course, anytime you see one of our staff on the ship, if you've got a question about, hey, I'm having a few problems with these binoculars, then just pull one of the staff aside. Binoculars are something we sort of put on in the morning. Most of us try to take off when we eat, so we don't drop food on eye cups, and then we put them back on as soon as we go back outside. So we're all pretty familiar with binocular use. Yeah, I think that's it. There's a pair of binoculars in each stateroom.
Perfect. Thank you, Aaron. A couple of questions are coming in about if we could just clarify how many passengers are on the ship each time. And then also we've got Kevin here asking, so how do we make sure that everybody gets a chance to spend some time ashore in Antarctica, given the limits on how many people can visit?
Yeah, two great questions. And so our guest capacity on board is 378 guests on the ship. The second question was, how do we ensure? Well, when your journey will open in My Viking Journey, you will have an opportunity to book a spot to make a booking at a landing site. You'll only be able to make one booking at each landing site on each day for a Zodiac excursion, or if we're doing a Zodiac cruise, you have the opportunity to book that. So we have enough spots that everybody gets ashore. We've given ourselves enough time at a landing site so that we can get everybody ashore, and so everybody will have a site booking. As we bring later groups ashore, earlier groups are leaving the site, and it's a constant flow of people through. And then we've just got a beach master on the beach who's either got a degree in mathematics or secretly wishes they had a degree in mathematics and does accounting to make sure we stay under 100 guests ashore at any one time.
Perfect. Thank you, Aaron. We've got Farad in the United States, and he asks, can you tell us a bit more about the exact places or islands we'll visit during the 4 to 5 days in Antarctica?
Yes and no. I hate to say no right off the bat. So you will get more details about that when it opens up in My Viking Journey. What happens right now is we belong to an association of the International Association of Antarctica Tour Operators. As a member of that association, we follow some guidelines that are equal across all the companies in the industry. We all have to follow these, and one of those is some marketing guidelines. And one of the marketing things we pledge to is not to promise individual sites that we're going to visit on the course of a voyage. So when I started in 1998 on ships, and through till about 6 or 7 years ago, guests came onto the ship with a list of landing sites that they'd seen in the marketing material that we had to go to on that trip. And we have to book the landing sites. So there's other ships down there, of course, at the same time. So we have to book the landing sites. There's only one ship allowed at a landing site, and that's to preserve the wilderness values of the area and to protect the wildlife, protect the site, so there's not a lot of congestion. So we book these sites. So if you have people coming with material that says we're going to go here, here, and here, but you can't get those sites, you've got unhappy people and unhappy expedition leaders as well. So over a few years, there was a subtle shift in that we sort of sanitized our material to not specify landing sites. What I can tell you is we have some fabulous sites. Our ship schedule has just opened. We've booked a bunch of sites that most of the companies in the industry have booked their sites for the Antarctic season, this coming season. We've got some fantastic sites. We're in the process of just verifying that those sites are the ones that we can get there. Everything's good. And then those will open up. You'll see those specific sites in My Viking Journey. A few things I can say a little more detailed is what we're looking for in picking landing sites is we're looking for sites with penguin rookeries. So we're looking for Gen 2 penguin rookeries, chinstrap penguin rookeries, and Adelie penguin rookeries. We're looking for, on all of our voyages, we've planned a site where you'd get ashore on the physical continent of Antarctica. So I view visiting Antarctica as visiting any island, as being within sight of it, as being in the Southern Ocean and crossing the Antarctic convergence. But of course, I can have that sort of more open view. I've been there so many times that if you're just on your one trip there and you want to step foot on the continent, well, we've got a landing that's planned to get you ashore on a continent. And it might be at a penguin colony, it might be at a historical site, but we'll get you on the physical continent of Antarctica. We've got a few stops on offshore islands that have historical value, and our guides will interpret the historical value of those sites. Perhaps they're sites that have been were used for sealing or for whaling, or they could be sites that are used for early scientific stations. And we aren't visiting the science bases at the moment. There's still the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, shutdown of those bases, because those bases are quite isolated. They don't have the complex medical care on board. They don't want us visiting the sites and potentially bringing something to the station. I hope I answered your question. I'm sorry I can't give you the specific site names, but we've got a whole bunch of exciting itineraries. I'm very excited. I've been working on them this week with the team, the operations team, and I'm really, really jazzed to get on the ship.
Awesome. Thank you, Aaron. You just mentioned penguins, so we've got a couple of questions here. Walter in the United States would like to know, is there a better month in particular to maximise penguin sightings? And then we've got Lisa, she's asking about whales. Is there a particularly good time to see the most whale sightings?
Yeah, so I'll answer the penguin one first, and yeah, well, yes and no. It depends on what you want to see. Early in the season, as we start in November, what we're going to see is the penguins are coming back ashore and they're finding their nesting sites. They're building their nests. Sometimes they're sitting patiently on the snow above where their nest is going to be, waiting for that snow to melt down. And so they've got their partner and they're sitting on the snow. One's feeding, and then they'll come back and they'll do their little ritual, pair bonding ritual, and then squawk at each other a bit. Maybe the one coming back will bring a pebble and put it there and say, "Hey, when we get our nest, this is for the new wall I'm building around the nest." So that's early season. As December, as we progress through November into December, the snow is melting off the sites and the penguins are on the ground, and they won't lay eggs on the snow. They need the bedrock. The rocks, so they're down on the ground and they will lay their eggs and they're sitting on their nest. And then that's a fun time. You see the penguins coming back from the water and full bellies. They're pristine, clean. They've usually got a penguin, and then they come back and they run the gauntlet through the colony, getting pecked at as they get past the other nest to their nest, and then they drop the pebble and do their pair bonding thing, and I think it's wonderful to see that time of year. One sitting on an egg, and then eventually on young chicks as we go through December into January. The chicks are hatching and the chicks are growing. They're still on the nest, and one parent is on the nest, feeding and protecting the chicks, keeping them warm, protecting them from aerial predation from skuas and giant petrels. And as we go through January, and depending on where we are on the peninsula, we travel different parts. The northern peninsula would be a little earlier. The southern, as we go down south, the penguin colonies are a little delayed as the ices and the snow has just come out. But as we go through January, we see the chicks getting bigger and starting to leave the nests, and they'll be chasing their parents around the landing site, and then all of a sudden they'll be quite rowdy and they'll be really aggressively chasing their parents, and that's when they're eating so much that both parents are actually out feeding, coming back, and then it's a full-on assault of the parent from the chick as the chick is like, feed me, I need some food, and it's just chasing the parent, and you see these hilarious parodies of penguins running and tripping over rocks and falling down little slopes and running over other penguins as the chick is chasing the parent. And the parent's like, "For God's sakes, leave me alone. I just need to take a breather. It was cold out there in the water. I almost got eaten by a leopard seal. I just need a few minutes to relax." So the chick does not want anything to do with it. They just want the food. So that goes into the season. The chicks are crushing at this point while the parents are out, and that's they're gathering in groups, small groups of other penguins of chicks that and they're molting at the same time. So their downy feathers are coming off, and they're growing in their first swimming feathers. And so you've got these molting, rowdy penguins that are desperate. They just need food. Their stomachs are growling. They're chasing the adults, their parents, and then they start to get these little tufts, and they'll have mohawks and tufts going out of, and they start to look a little ratty, and they're getting kind of dirty at this point. They haven't been in the water yet to wash off, and then we get into sort of that's into January into February, and then eventually the chicks are at the point where they've fully molted their down, and they're getting ready. They're playing down at the water's edge, and the adults are ready to let them go, to fledge them and let them go. And the adults have a time clock that they have to get to. They need to get to another site away from those chicks. They need to get some food on them, some stores on them, and get to this other site. And then they do a molt where they replace all their feathers. They do a catastrophic molt. So they replace all their feathers. So they have quite a tight energy balance where they stand there for one point. And that's into late February into March. We see that. And so they're just standing there. And we give them a bigger distance at this point because we don't want to stress them at that point. So that's sort of the life of a season in a penguin rookery. So what's the best time to see a penguin? It depends what part of that life of the penguin you want to see. I don't have a preference. I've gone back and forth. I've switched times over the seasons of what my favorite time is. My favorite time to see a penguin is when I'm seeing the penguin, I think. So that's the penguins. In terms of whales, what we're seeing over the course of the season is, as the season progresses, we see more and more humpback whales down there. Humpbacks are really the whales that we're going to see the most of during the course of a voyage. Other whales that we have a good potential to see in the Drake Passage, coming down as we approach the South Shetland Islands, we have a good chance of seeing fin whales. As we get in closer, minke whales and humpback whales down in the Gerlache Strait and into the inner waterways. There's a resident population of orca. We don't see them every voyage, but get out there and look. And what we say is the more people out there looking, the more chance we'll have of seeing whales. But the ones we really we don't set our watch by, but we have a pretty good chance of seeing most days are the humpback whales. And that's really from late December on. We've got high concentrations of whales on the peninsula. We will see whales early in the season. We just will work a little harder to find them earlier in the season. And it's more minkies early in the season, and then the humpbacks as they're coming down. The humpbacks are coming in. This is their feeding ground. So they're coming down from their calving grounds with their calves. And in November, they're starting to build up their energy stores so they can make the migration back up to their calving grounds the next fall. Austral fall, Southern Hemisphere fall. So, March, April as they leave the Antarctic. So over the course of an Antarctic season, the whales will put quite a dramatic mass on them of food stores, of energy stores through the season. As they start, they're quite hungry. They're quite anxious. They're, sorry, can't stop. Gotta eat, gotta feed. As the season progresses, this is my anthropomorphic interpretation of their behavior. As the season progresses, the whales are slowing down and they're like, "Oh yeah, who are you? What are you doing here? Yeah, I'll hang out and let you look at me, take some pictures of me. I've got time. I've put on a couple tons, couple 100 tons, whatever it is. I don't know what they put on over the course of a season. I've got time for a photograph," and they just become more relaxed throughout the course of the season. Now that's a very unscientific viewpoint of their behavior, but it's what me as an expedition leader, as 20-something years watching whales in the Antarctic, that's my interpretation of their behavior through the course of the season.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Aaron. Next question here is from Scott in Easton in the United States, and he says, "Can you tell us more about what kind of Antarctic experts will be joining guests on this voyage?"
Yes, that was Scott. Thank you for that question. And yes, the experts. We have slightly different expertises on each voyage, specialties on each voyage, but generally what we're looking for is to have a geologist on the ship, a geologist or glaciologist, an earth scientist on the ship. there's such a story of the geology of Antarctica, the glaciology, the formation of the glaciers, the mountains, the erosion, the icebergs. It's all comes from what's happening on the land, the glaciology and geomorphology, geology. So there's usually that specialty covered. Marine biology is near and dear to us, and on any voyage we'd tend to have a marine biologist on board. A penguin biologist or a bird ornithologist is a specialty we generally have on our voyages, and often a historian on board as well. There's so many different stories, overlapping stories, that the marine biologist talks about the seals, the historian talks about the sealing industry, and what brought the discovery of the Antarctic, and the geologist jumps in and talks about the cliffs, and the ornithologist talks about the birds that nest on those cliffs, and so we tie the story together quite closely. Those are our specialists that are part. The other part of that enrichment is our science program, and so we have oceanographers or marine biologists as our chief scientists on the ship. So each voyage has that chief scientist. And then we have a field research assistant, a partner scientist. And the partner scientist or field research scientist might be an ornithologist, it could be a marine biologist, it could be a physical oceanographer, it could be a Antarctic geologist. And so that expertise is a supplement to the specialists we carry on every voyage.
Thank you, Aaron. We've got quite a few more questions here about equipment, so I'll just ask a few quick ones if that's okay. Yep. So we have Eileen in Long Beach asks, can you bring your own waterproof boots if you'd like to?
Well, yes, Eileen, you can bring your own waterproof boots if you'd like to, but and really, if you have sort of footbed issues or mobility issues that you're really comfortable in those boots and you feel you're going to have a much better experience, then do that. When you get on board, we'll ask you to biosecure them, to clean them and make sure and sanitize them. And so we'll have a station, a biosecurity station that on the Drake Passage heading south, we'll say, hey, if you brought any of your own stuff, come on down right now and we'll have a little biosecuring party. So we'll have a vacuum to clean out the inside of the boot and the scrub brushes and we'll help you with this. We'll scrub the sole of it, and then we'll have a dipping trough to dip the boots in. So you can bring your own boots. We have fantastic gum boots. These are designed specifically for Viking by a designer that is known for designing some of the designs of the bog boots and the muck boots. So it's a neoprene boot. It's got a very good tread for two things: one for stability and traction, but the other for shedding guano, and it doesn't pick up a lot of stuff. Between each landing site, we're going to actually have you biosecure, clean your boots off, go through a boot washing machine, clean your boots and sanitize them. So our boots are designed to make that process fairly simple. They don't have really tight lugs. So if your boots are tight lugged, then you might want to think twice, because you'll spend a bit of frustrating time trying to get stones and guano and so on out from those treads. But you're welcome to bring your own.
Perfect, thank you. And a quick question here from Susan in the United States. Do I need to bring my own trekking poles departing in February for Antarctica?
No, that is a great question. We were just talking about this here in the office today. No, you don't need to bring your own trekking poles. We've got lots on board. And when you come ashore, those trekking poles will be on the beach ready to go. They're fairly easy to adjust, but if you need help, one of our staff will be there to help you adjust them to your length. And we've got enough that you can have 2 trekking poles, or you can just grab one. And so, yes, that might save you a little extra thing to pack.
Wonderful, thank you. And finally on this topic, Michael in Lino Lakes in the United States says, we're sailing in December. Will we receive a suggested packing list, or could you give us a few tips now on what not to miss bringing?
Yes, you will receive a suggested packing list, and it's quite comprehensive. A few things that I think are critical is and you don't have to rush out. You can wait for the packing list to do this, but just think about the layering principle. So you want layers where you can build upon. So starting with a thermal or a base layer. I like a merino wool base layer. It's sometimes a little pricier than the polypropylene base layer or synthetic base layer. But what I find about the merino is it doesn't take on the odor quite as quickly. So you're fresher. relatively fresh when you take it off. Very fresh compared to some of the polypro base layers. I would start with that base layer, and then I would add an insulating layer on top of that. A nice thing for the legs, in December, it's starting to warm up, but even so, having a fleecy lining for under your wind pants, your rain pants, is nice. So a thermal layer and then a fleecy lining, an insulating layer, before you put your wind pants on. That makes a big difference to the comfort. Having a nice warm pair of socks, having a couple of warm pairs of socks is always good. Most places when I pack to go on trips, and whether it's business trips or other to the ship, I always, pack my socks and then I take a couple of pairs out because I always have too many. And that comes from years of working on the ships, where I would pack my socks and then I had 2 more pairs in of warm socks. Splurge on the nice, comfortable socks that are comfortable to be in for longer periods of time in your boots, walking around, just because this is your chance in the Antarctic. So make sure your feet are comfortable and happy. And then gloves. Thinking about gloves, waterproof, but waterproof or windproof is great, and being able to maintain some dexterity so that you can open your life jacket, or you can open your zipper, or get things out of your pocket. You can use your phone without getting your gloves off. But there is quite a comprehensive packing list that'll come to you shortly.
Amazing. Thank you, Aaron. Question here from Rosemary in Albany in the United States. What are the chances of seeing the Southern Lights?
Great question, Rosemary. And I can actually make this a very quick answer. You've probably noticed by now that my answers are long. Pretty slim. The most of the season we're in the Antarctic. The first 2/3 of the season that we're in the Antarctic, it'll be light. It won't be sunlight 24 hours a day, but it won't be dark at night. It'll be dusky or nautical twilight, but doesn't get really dark. And you need that darkness to see the Southern Lights. The other point is we're getting down to 62, 65 degrees south latitude, but that's sort of the northern extreme of where we'd see the Southern Lights. So if you're down in the latter end of the season into March, there's a chance, but in the peak season in December, January, very unlikely.
Perfect, thank you. We've got Deb in New York, and she asks, do you need to be already proficient before you can use one of the kayaks?
I know that's a great question about the kayaks. Thank you, Deb, for that. No, you do not need to be proficient. We do ask that you have some prior small boat experience, either canoe or kayak experience, paddleboard experience, so you understand how a small boat moves and the stability and so on. Antarctica is a cool place to learn about stability and primary and secondary stability. So have a little bit of experience, but you don't need to be proficient. Our kayaks are designed to be stable and to take the sort of maximum range of paddlers out. Paddling. So they're wider, they sit on top, they've got comfortable seats, and then they've got a novel propulsion mechanism, a foot pedal propulsion. But some people don't like that, or some days, sort of windy, choppy days, people are more comfortable with the paddle. So we also have paddles. We can take those foot pedals out and just paddle the kayak as a traditional sit on top paddle kayak. So they're flexible, they've got a rudder to steer, and they're double kayaks, so you always have someone else to blame if you're not going in the right direction.
Lovely, thank you, Aaron. Patty in San Francisco would like to know, what's the passenger capacity on the Zodiacs and special operations boats? And Kevin asks, is going out in a Zodiac considered an excursion?
Yes, to both. I can easily answer that. The passenger capacity of the Zodiacs, I think it's 13 or 14 by regulation, but we tend to, for Zodiac transfers, 8 to 10 ashore, and for Zodiac cruising, we try to Zodiac cruise with 8 in the Zodiac. It's just more comfortable that way, a little more space. If you do have a big camera, you don't knock someone overboard when you turn to take a picture of someone. So that's the capacity of the Zodiac. The special operations boat is a much larger boat, 13 meters. It's at about 45 feet long, and it's 40 feet, I think. And it is, and there's 12 very comfortable seats that are that have armrests on them and that are sort of shock absorbing. So if the boat's bouncing a little bit, the seat absorbs a lot of that bounce. And that's 12 passengers in that boat. That boat would have one of our officers driving that boat, and then we'll have a general naturalist or one of our specialists interpreting in that boat as well. So sharing, talking about what you're seeing, interpreting with you. So that's those two. Now, is a Zodiac class as an excursion? Yeah, anytime we leave the ship and do something is an activity or an excursion, and so we'll have activities and excursions available for pre-booking in My Viking Journey. But there will also be days where we have opportunistic excursions where we realize we've got time, we're in a place, there's everything's, the stars are all aligned, and we can put the Zodiacs down and go for a cruise. And then we'll put a call out for anybody through the various communication methods we have on the ship. For anybody who wants to go for another activity, sign up and we'll get you out in a Zodiac. It doesn't happen every day, of course, but that happens from time to time. So that could be a Zodiac cruise that we're advertising, or additional special operations boat cruises.
Thank you. We've got a couple of very brave souls here, Anne and also Elizabeth. They're both asking, is there an opportunity to make a polar dip or a polar plunge?
So this is a great question. Brave is right. You don't want to do it. Trust me, it is cold, that water. Now, really, it's... is there an opportunity to do it? It's not something we do all the time. We really need it becomes a decision of the medical officer, the doctor on board the ship, for each person, whether that's something that we're going to that the doctor is going to sign off on each person going. It's quite a shock. You get quite a sort of a cold shock when you jump in from being bundled up, being inside the ship, and then being bundled up and then jumping in the water. So the doctor signs off on people doing that. So I'm not 100% certain whether we'll be the doctor will be signing off on that. Last year we had some of the COVID and pandemic sort of procedures and practices that made it hard for the doctor to do a good quick exam of someone in that interview before going. So it was sporadic. But yeah, if it's possible, it'll be announced, and the way we do things, it'll be an event, and you might even get a certificate.
Amazing. Thank you, Aaron. A couple of questions just coming in about the booking process to allocate an excursion. So some people are asking, is it the same as on the ocean ships whereby preference is given by cabin grade, or does it work differently for expeditions?
Thank you for that question. I am not 100% on the answer. I believe it's a similar system to ocean. That its preference is given, and that it's a staggered opening at that point.
Perfect. Thank you, Aaron. A question here from Dawn. She's in Atlanta, and she says, we're so excited to have signed up for November's Viking Polaris expedition. She says, I'm a biology teacher, and I'm wondering if there are things we can do before or after our cruise to assist with the education efforts in this area.
Yes, I'm sure there are. I'm not sure about before the cruise, but certainly where the benefit will be is, this is exciting. We have a chief scientist on board. We've got a lab. We've got a field research assistant, and there'll be a field research scientist on board the ship. So cozy up to those people and get to know them, get to understand, find out what they're doing, and they will be able to tell you how they can integrate. They're scientists, but they're also into the enrichment education, promoting the science that's being done, the important work that's being done in the Antarctic. So I'm sure they would be very keen to have a biology teacher show interest and be willing to do something. And we do have some ways that they can communicate and follow up with some of the projects they're doing, or connect you to some of our science partners that might be close by to where you are. So, wow, that's really exciting.
Awesome. Thank you, Aaron. So I think this is probably the last question we've got time for tonight. So we'll just finish on one about availability. So we've got Diana who'd like to know if there is still any availability for January or February 2023. And Linda, who would like to know, when does the winter of 2024 become available?
hit me with the two hard questions at the end. I'm sure with both ships going down to the Antarctic, there's a few spots here and there. So I would call in. I wouldn't wait too long. I would call in, and I would like to think that I'm going to influence a bunch of people. So get in there first. But really, I mean, the spaces are filling up. So call and your booking agent that you've dealt with before, and they'll let you know exactly. But I have a feeling there's we can make space. We have a few cabins here and there throughout those peak season voyages. Not a lot, but we do have some. The shoulder season, we've got a little more availability in the early season and the late season. But yeah, so call up in terms of when the next season is coming available. I'm sorry, that's just a little outside my knowledge base. But check in with your sales agent, and they will be able to answer those questions very quickly. I'm sorry, my expertise is more operations, and my passion is polar, as you can tell. So I sometimes forget some of these other details.
Not at all. Thank you so much, Aaron. That's been so informative. Thank you for answering so many questions tonight.
Oh, my pleasure. And thank you, folks, for signing into Viking TV this evening or today. It's been wonderful to have your questions and to see the interest and excitement. And I hope you felt my passion for the place. And I do look forward to seeing you on board. And of course, if you do have other questions, then reach out to your contacts and the sales team that you've dealt with before, and send the questions. And they do have a really broad knowledge base and access to the information to answer those questions. But if not, they also have the ability to reach out to those of us on the operations team to get a little more information that might be specific to your question. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you on a ship someday down the road.